Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Back and Forth podcast. Today I have a treat for you all. I have Binh from, what's the company, Binh?
Seriously Trademarks.
Seriously Trademarks, and Cynthia from Dearin Associates joining us for this podcast. I've been trying to get this episode running for some time with Binh because Binh was very high to talk about the world of IP as well as what it means for business to get their branding right, not just in the jurisdiction of Australia, but internationally. Cynthia's have a very accomplished background history in politics, geopolitics, as well as specifically in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And now she's also a very accomplished lawyer, now starting with your own company, Dearin Associates, which is mainly focusing on consultancy to companies who wants to grow internationally. So the conversation today will be specifically on companies who wants to grow, not only in Australia, but getting their branding right internationally, as well as exploring the possibility of overseas markets, but making sure those foundations are laid correctly. And I'm just going to add some logistics, fun facts for the ladies where it fits. Binh,
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you.
We finally got here.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to forgive you for forgetting my new company name.
I apologize because I should have.
No. I forgive you because I've actually been at two other places.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I've actually decided to go out on my own.
And I even have a cheat sheet, which I didn't use. Full disclosure,
Yes.
if you see our
TGL,
branding,
yes.
and there's the registered trademark,
that's
so
right.
Binh
It was
helped
me.
us
It
achieve
was
those
me.
registered trademarks, and we have been,
in contact.
yeah,
over
we have
the
been in
years.
contact.
Yeah.
And to be frank, I think it was probably one of the best decisions we made.
Yes.
It really separated us from a lot of our competitors who haven't taken the time focusing on their branding, as well as, I guess, the intellectual property of the branding.
Yes.
Right?
Well, congratulations on you, because when I first visited you were in a different office, and now this amazing office that you've moved into, and I can clearly see you've grown with your brand, and with your brand, it's been protected now in Australia. So
That's right. Well, we are also growing overseas, and I think this conversation definitely can help me a lot as well.
Yeah.
So we very much look forward to it.
Yes, thank you.
Cynthia, Dearin and Associates.
Absolutely.
What are we here to accomplish?
So, I mean, if you ask us what the tagline is, it's essentially helping you succeed internationally, and we help companies to create a global footprint. And we go on that journey with them from the beginning. Well, I don't know if it's right to the end, because the end is kind of where you guys come in, but for a lot of the way of that journey.
What was the motivation for you to start a consultancy firm, given your law background, and then specifically focusing helping companies to grow overseas?
Great question. So let me tell you, I actually only became a lawyer so I could get into foreign affairs and trade. I wanted to be a diplomat from the time I was a little girl, and I heard somebody told me that if you did a law degree, it gave you a high chance of them letting you in, so I did a law degree.
And you did become a diplomat.
I did. So it works for that, apparently. And so, look, I mean, I'm still hold a practicing certificate, but I spend most of my time not doing the legal stuff, but really doing strategy. And so the motivation for me was that I did my law degree. I did foreign affairs and trade. I went into the diplomatic corps. I switched out of that and went to the dark side and became a management consultant a few years later. And I essentially worked all over the world. And as I did that, I saw that there were all these incredible opportunities for companies to go global. At the same time, I realized that companies had no way of seizing the opportunities because they just didn't know what to do. There was this kind of big information gap in the middle. And I thought that was such a shame. And, returning to Australia from overseas, I suddenly became really aware that what we were mainly doing was digging things out of the ground and sending it overseas. And that's fine as far as it goes. But we have companies that make amazing products, amazing goods, amazing services. And especially, in the products area, we have these inventors and creators who are so good at what they do. But, only a tiny fraction of the world, only Australia knows about their stuff because they don't know how to get it out there. And so,
Cynthia, I reckon it's because people are scared. It's like it's foreign to them.
Yeah.
The culture's foreign over there. The money, the exchange rates. There's so many factors.
It seems hard.
How do you set up a business there? So there's so many factors. So having your expertise to guide them through the various steps is really important.
Well, look, our job is to make it as simple as it can be. not to insult anyone, but you want to kind of break it down to paint by numbers. So you do this bit, and then you think about this bit, and then you think about this bit, so it's not overwhelming.
When we talk about the consultancy space, it is quite a broad space.
Yes.
And there's and you generally, when you think consultancies, you think about the big four.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely not that, let me just say.
Well, the thing why I say that is that I can't help but wonder in terms of the consultants that do go into the big four, that starts consulting for various industries. I can't speak for all the industries, but I can speak for our industry. And my general feeling with consultants for our industry have always sort of left me wanting a bit more, because I feel the information or the level of understanding is not as, it's not sort of dealt with in a robust manner. So everything's very surface driven.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite fluffy. Is the word. And I think one of our ex-employees joined the industry for a year and a half or so, and then he was joined one of the big four as a consultant for the industry, albeit junior consultant.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, wow, how is this person going to get more education to be a qualified consultant?
And look, I think for the international space, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I think in the international space, in Australia in particular, the industry is very, very underdeveloped. So, this industry, the industry that I'm in, is much more developed if you go to Europe or the UK or even the United States. But in Australia, if there's an international division in a large consulting firm, it's stuck somewhere, on the 5th floor behind a filing cabinet. Yeah. It's kind of an afterthought, whereas we're not there yet. But my ambition for our business is to really grow it out to be the consulting firm for international business in Australia, so that you can go somewhere and actually get a bunch of very smart people who understand what you're doing. We don't want to have 25-year-olds doing find and replace on standard documents. There's got to be, each company is different. Each company's got a specific set of issues that it's dealing with, and you want to be able to, I want to make sure that when I'm working with a client that I only give them what I'd want myself. Yeah. And I know sure as hell I would not want find and replace.
Yes. And how do you go about in finding the expertise and the knowledge base to satisfy your clients' wishes and wants or objectives?
So back in the day, I would refer a lot, kind of a serial referrer. So, whenever somebody came with a problem and I couldn't solve, or the team couldn't solve, we would refer it out. What we've started to do more recently is to actually build that expertise out inside the team. And so people will come quite frequently and say to me, can we collaborate? And so now instead of referring out, we look at people who come along with, we've had somebody who's joined our firm recently who's got massive expertise in distribution networks. And so we kind of looked at that person and said, you have the right expertise, we'll take you and put you inside the business. And so when people come and say, we need help to find a distributor, we send them off to that person. Yeah.
So definitely by way of, I guess, seeking experts in their field, proven track record, and they, we can leverage that. Let's collaborate. Sort of synergy.
Absolutely. And so, we have a model for international expansion. Over time, we will build that out so that we have somebody that fits in each part of the model. So we already have people who do marketing. We will look for more people who do international sales. We have somebody who can help with CFO advisory. We have distribution. We don't have trademarks or logistics at the moment, but hey, let's jump onto it.
That's what we're here.
That's right.
Is there any specific industry sector that you focus in or have had success in?
Yeah, look, I like to talk about manufacturing, I guess, because it covers quite a lot of things. I also think manufacturing is it's a favourite space of mine because I feel that it's been very overlooked. And also, as I said, there are a lot of manufacturers out there who are amazing at manufacturing, but really not that great at international strategy and international marketing. And I feel we've got a lot to offer. So, we've worked with a bunch of different manufacturing companies to successfully go global. One that springs to mind, there is the world's first ever smart motorbike helmet. Right. Came and worked with us, and we helped them get really focused on which market they were going to go into. And they went and then got a distribution deal in that market, and their first purchase order was a $1.6 million purchase order.
As a country, do we still retain any level of manufacturing base?
Yeah, we do. But I mean, look, arguably you could do more. But I mean, as I say, there's been such a huge move to offshoring that it's really dwindled from what it was. I feel that, well, I mean, we know that because of COVID, there was a lot of reshoring. I think it remains to be seen now going forward whether that holds, or whether people get fed up with that and say, oh no, we're going to offshore. I think you might also see a trend towards Australian manufacturers setting up their own factories rather than contract manufacturing overseas, setting up their own operations close to market, because people are, I mean, you will see this all the time. People struggle where they have to transport their stuff a very long way. It's costly, and so they're always looking for how they could trim that down.
Yeah. Well, transportation in domestic, when you talk within the Australian borders, often for us to move something domestically,
it's more expensive.
And that is a huge challenge. And that is mostly because we live in a large piece of land.
Yeah.
And there's only 26 million. Those two you add together, it's a disaster.
I was at a manufacturing expo earlier this year and spoke to a lot of the manufacturers there. They said that they'd like to have it in Australia, but the problem is it's not just manufacturing their products, but it's all the little pieces of other products that will go into their products that's missing. That there's not a manufacturer for that little widget that will then go into their widget. And that's the problem where, let's say China, they would have lots of manufacturers doing various widgets that will then fit into their big widget.
And it's very cost effective.
Yes.
Well, don't forget, I mean, due to the overseas investment into Asia, specifically, namely China, this hasn't happened overnight. This has happening since the 80s. Right? And the amount of investments that's gone into the country, the expertise, the know-hows, you know, all of the good stuff when it comes to manufacturing. This is decades in development, decades in perfecting. Right? You can't just claw back over that overnight. It's impossible. I was just actually looking at online just recently. I was at a shock because I was looking at the average salary in Australia. Do we know what the average salary in Australia is?
70? No, it's gone up.
90,000.
Whoa, really?
According to all my research, unless I'm reading completely, false narratives from Google, I was in shock. I was
Wow.
like, you cannot compete. Impossible. Right. So that's why every time I see a politician, or our greatest leaders, I call them, on TV and asking its populace to, you got to pivot away from China and just diversify.
Well, there's going to have to be more government incentives, I guess, for the people that actually take that risk.
Yeah, it has to be, because how else are you going to, you cannot, right? Those relationships have taken decades to cut out. And, the process of quality checking something, manufacturing, the whole process is very robust and intensive. You can't just pivot away on the drop of a hat. It's not realistic. And then to do it cost effectively, it's near impossible, I say.
I think pivoting back to what you're saying about the ones that do manufacture here, they shouldn't just look at the domestic market. We were talking off camera earlier that they should be brave and look at exporting their product overseas, even though it's complex. We've got logistics, we've got how do you enter the market, you've got intellectual property, all those considerations. But as we were all saying, the market overseas, there's more people overseas. You're going to get a bigger client base.
90% of the people you could sell to are not here.
Yeah.
At least 90%.
Exactly.
Probably more.
And I think circling back as well, it's a good point you touched on, Cynthia, about, you say you're an Australian entity or company, you have a great idea, you've got a great product. So when you want to grow overseas, there isn't a clear channel in terms of who is there to assist me with it. Right? Yeah. Naturally, you gravitate towards some sort of government agency, lately, Austrade.
Yeah.
Austrade has always been a bit of a hit and miss, I think. I've had participated in some of the events over the years I've been in this game. In fact, actually, next week we're going to have a meeting with them, a few of the lovely ladies there here locally, to talk about how we can collaborate a bit more. But, through that mechanism, that is a mechanism that also rotates quite slowly. And the advice sometimes is, again, quite fluffy. And this is why we want to inject some of our expertise into it.
And look, I think government trade promotion agencies are great for what they are mandated to do, which is to make those connections and to put the government imprimatur on what people do. You know, so to run a trade mission, say this is sponsored by government, and to, you know, especially, you know, as you guys will know, in Asian markets, having that government stamp does a lot to boost a company's credibility. So that can be super helpful. Yeah. But I mean, government is not really resourced, and in my view, it's not really government's role to take a company by the hand and to walk through the whole journey of international expansion with the company. I mean, it's not practical. They're not going to do it for you for your domestic business, even less so for international, right?
Well, it continues to not be practical. This is why we need, you know, Dearin Associates to pick up the slack.
I'm doing my best.
So touching back on the trademarks, and this was, you know, it got me thinking, preparing for today's chat, is that, so obviously from a very onward, I've always been branding minded, marketing minded, because I feel that image is very important. Because I like to work with businesses and individuals who present well. If you get the basics right, it means that should follow through with most of your business processes. And so we took the time and the effort and the energy and the money to go and get our branding, registered design, and all that good stuff. Thinking just about our industry, how often do you come across someone in our industry going through the process of getting their branding registered and IP protected and so forth?
Well, in your industry in particular, no one really thinks about branding, only because it's a services industry. Most of the clients that export overseas are products. So, you know, you've got the Unilevers or the Coca-Colas where it's product-based, and their brand is really important, and they don't want the reputation to be tarnished. They don't want any copycats. So they definitely, a lot of them would trademark before they even go to market. And the reason for that is that logistically, if you can imagine, if Coca-Cola launched a new product, they don't actually want their competitors to know what the new name is. Secondly, they don't want to infringe on another brand's
because they'll open up lawsuits and all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So these large companies have the resources of lawyers and branding agencies to find that unique name for them, and they take the time because they see it as important. Imagine Coca-Cola having to recall products from around the world. That's just not going to happen. Yeah. So the thing is, it's trademarking or intellectual property are not just for the large companies. It's actually quite affordable for the small companies. But the small companies don't really think about it because it's not at the forefront of their, you know, of when they're looking at launching a new brand or service. So reality is, what happens is when someone's starting a new business, they go see an accountant or lawyer to set up their business, their company name. And then the accountant would say, I've got the ASIC company name for you, go ahead and open your stores or launch your product. But the accountants are looking at your tax and your structure. They're not really looking at your brand. So it's not their job to understand branding protection. So a lot of the time I spend a lot trying to educate small business owners that actually the trademark trumps your company name. It trumps your domain name. It even trumps your sales history. So you could be trading for all these years thinking that you've got protection because you've got a company name. That's completely false. Yes. And time again, that has been debunked because there's been, I think there was one lawsuit a couple of years ago where No. 5 chocolate was, you know, sued by Chanel.
Right.
Because No. 5, you know. And Chanel's trying to bully us, you know. But at the end of the day, Chanel has spent so much money, you know, investing in the No. 5 brand, that even though they don't produce chocolate, they don't want to be associated with a small company. But they still have the
reach.
That's right. And the thing was, I think they didn't actually copy Chanel. Apparently they were on No. 5 Church Street or some street in Adelaide, and so therefore they just said, oh, we'll just call a brand No. 5 chocolate. Not really thinking about Chanel. Right. But because they didn't know what they didn't know, they just ran ahead.
Well, they must
which
be
is going
doing
to
well for it to be on the radar of Chanel.
Well, not really. Those big companies have got lawyers.
Right.
And actually, by the way, a trademark attorney in Australia is not a lawyer.
Right.
So I'm not a lawyer.
okay.
And a patent attorney also isn't a lawyer as well.
Right.
They've got lawyers there monitoring the database, and they just want to make sure that they can enforce their brand. So they will just send you a cease and desist letter.
Was they successful in this case? Because I would imagine, I'm guessing that the number 5 chocolate wasn't trademarked.
No, it wasn't trademarked.
Right.
So basically, any small business owner would be bonkers to go to court against a big company. Right. So they did actually rebrand without having to go to court. So, but the fact is that when you start a business, you got to think about these things. Don't copy big brands. Make sure that the brand that you've come up with is trademarkable, that it's unique. Right. You're first to use it. You're first to trademark it. Yes. And those are the things that needs to be considered before you even go and see your accountant to get your company name. And by looking at that just on Australia level, it actually then gets more complicated going overseas. Because you've got to look at that name, not just in Australia, but around the world or in the countries you want to enter to make sure that it's available. Yeah. I mean, I had a client years ago that had a board game. We got the trademark for them in Australia. Then they wanted to expand to the US. We couldn't get that name. So we created a new name. And now there's a new brand. And then they want to go to the UK. Instead of having one brand with the same product, they've got 3 brands in 3 different countries.
So how can a company who's expanding overseas and so forth secure the one name to cover all geographies or markets?
Sometimes they can't.
No, they can't unless they make up a name.
Right.
And I specialize in that area because I've got, I've worked in marketing in my previous life. I've got a master's of business and marketing, and now I'm a trademark attorney, so I've got trademark expertise. So having those 2 skill sets actually is beneficial because often my clients come to me and they'll give me a name they want, and then they might say, I just want to be in Australia, or they'll say, I want to be in Australia and I want to be in Malaysia. I will actually look at those names, and if it's too close to something else, I'll say, let's brainstorm. Let's find a unique name that is trademarkable in those 2 countries.
The question I have in my mind is that we've identified that SMEs often don't think about trademarking anything, right? Because that's not their focus for the obvious reasons, I guess, tight budgets and their focus on our product, all that stuff. Then how do you go from that reality to get a small and medium-sized enterprise to think about, at the early days, which is what we're talking about, we need to consult someone such as yourself with our branding and name. Isn't that a leap too far? And how do we bridge that?
Well, it's actually not that expensive as you found to trademark in Australia. Right. I mean, including my fees and government fees, you're looking at like $260 a year to protect your brand. You might have to pay it up front, but when we average it out over 10 years, because that's what an average trademark protection is, it's very affordable.
So it's $260 per year?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, based on my fees. But
and plus the service fees as well, of course. Yes.
No, that includes my service fees.
So that includes your service fees? Wow.
Oh, I must be too cheap. So the misconception is intellectual property, trademarking, is not affordable. It's actually so affordable.
That's right.
And the examples I can give of clients, if they just rang someone that knew what they were looking for in the trademark register, could have saved them a lot of money having to rebrand later. Because as you know, every time especially if you're going overseas, you're putting a lot of money, upfront investment into the brand, the packaging, the strategy, the consultancy.
If you make something like shoes, you've got to pay for all the molds.
Yes, that's right.
You get the mold wrong with the wrong name on it, and then, name's wrong, you have to go back.
Yeah, you've got to go back.
Thousands of dollars just to remake the mold.
That's right. And that's what I'm saying is that they should, like even if you're just doing it in Australia, launching the product or service in Australia, take a step back because it actually only will probably delay you a couple of weeks. And you've got to work with someone that has that knowledge, okay, that's also willing to go on a limb to be able to say, I think you need to steer away from that because it's possibly going to infringe. I mean, nothing we do is guaranteed at the end of the day, but at the same time, we've got our expertise that guides them to the best solution. And so that's, for me, part of the reason why I've gone into my own practice recently again is that I found that I actually want to make sure that the client starts their brand on the right footing. So even if it might take me a couple of weeks to work with them to get the branding right, I will do that. But my fees are fixed, and so therefore it just makes me feel happy that I'm able to help the business and to have them create that brand. And I am so joyful when the brand is approved and over the years, like your brand has grown. It just makes my job really rewarding at the end of the day to see it grow.
I think part of it is to get people to understand. And most of it, people, they don't understand through lack of, I guess, what we're trying to achieve here, right? Which is education.
Education.
Right? And to bring the good folks of the SME world up to speed with what something costs. Because most think, oh, that must be expensive, which is a false sort of illusion, myth, right? And you debunk it and say, it's affordable.
It's affordable.
And it doesn't take much. It just, if you really care about your product and your company, which is, let's face it, all SME owners, we're putting our skin in the game.
Yes.
So I think as long as people understand that, I think more adoption will come through.
Yeah, business owner. And I actually say not everyone needs a trademark, right? And I say that if you start a brand and someone a year later, 2 years later, come and says, stop using that brand because you're infringing on my mark. Well, at that stage, if you say, okay, I don't care about my brand, I'll change my brand tomorrow, then you don't need a trademark because you're not valuing your brand. But if you value the brand that you've started and you've put all your effort, your sweat, your money, your reputation, you want to protect it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it's as simple as that.
I think for me, getting your brand protected is just sends the right signals to the right people.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with people getting to a business, getting a product or whatever company you want to do, just create it, blow it up and flip it. There's nothing wrong with that, power to them. But then other people, then when you see someone who has their branding trademarked and registered, it tells you, okay, this person's in it for a long haul.
Yes.
That person has a longer vision in terms of what he wants that product or her product to become. And that helps me identify the people I work with.
And you would go through the steps and you would also tell them what the roadblocks could be and you give them the best options. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what all three of us are doing, is giving our expertise to our clients that require that information. And we are guiding them because we're doing this every day. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do in your industry or vice versa. So I'm a big believer about going to the right expert consultant. Because without that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Why would you want to make a mistake? I mean, I really love it when the client comes to me and I go, you can't trademark that. Let me help you find a new name. Because I know I've just saved them a lot of money.
Yes.
That's you know.
Well, I think being business owners, all three of us, I think we've all made mistakes in our business.
Yes, definitely.
In hindsight, gift of hindsight, we would be like, oh God, had I done that,
someone told me.
Saved me a lot of blood, sweat and tears.
Yeah.
So definitely. Cynthia, thinking about your business today, what is the most prominent challenge you're currently facing with the current macroeconomics or whatever the challenges we're facing as a community?
I think people are hesitant to take risks at the moment. So people are very much taking a let's wait and see what the Reserve Bank does next kind of approach, because a lot of people are going through cost of living pain, inflationary pressure. There's been a great deal of difficulty finding staff. I don't know if you guys have seen this year, but I've spoken to multiple business owners who've said, I can't even get somebody to drive my delivery van. I'm out there driving it myself this week because, we can't get anybody. So people have kind of put everything on pause. And when you say, well, should we try to move your global strategy forward? They're like, oh, I don't know if now's the right time. Maybe we should wait till next year. Well, if the economy is going down the drain in your home market, that's actually the right time to be looking outside because it's a hedge.
Absolutely.
And one of the, the key reasons that you would look to go global is to hedge, seasonality or fluctuating economic conditions at home.
Yes. I'm 100% on your camp. In our industry, across the board, this year compared to previous years, the volumes and the income have dropped by 50 to 60% on average across the industry. That's that is pretty seismic.
Yeah.
So most people will be like hunkering down, which is important. What's your cost and all that? That's basic fundamentals. But what else are you going to do with your time, right?
Well, there's got to be some upside, right?
Exactly.
Risk works in both directions.
You should have a lot of free time outside of generating business.
Yeah.
If things are too buoyant, too busy, you're just so busy trying to keep the boat afloat, for lack of a better pun.
So it's a great time to basically take stock.
Well, we did
and
see this
explore,
during COVID as well. I mean, a lot of people didn't want to do anything during COVID, but a lot of people had so much spare time and couldn't go anywhere. So, I mean, we had quite a few people coming to us even during that period saying, well, let's plan now because, you know, we'll be able to action it. And those people are now going on and actually doing things.
Yeah.
But it's about getting people to be comfortable with a level of risk. I mean, you're not asking them to bet the whole house on something, but if you don't take any risk, you can't have any upside.
Which is interesting you touch on the risk. Like, you know, as business owners, any business owner, you go into your own business, you're either a sucker for punishment or you're a risk taker.
Yeah, I think we're all...
Or a bit of both.
Or a bit of both. Usually it's always both. But then for us to then stop short of going that final step, I would say your skin's already in the game.
Yeah.
What's holding you back? It's like running a marathon, the last bend, and you say, I'm giving up. No, well, just push a little bit harder.
Yeah.
This is a time where better than ever is when we need to look abroad to expand what we believe to be.
There's probably less competitors going over, because if everyone's stopping their growth strategy and you're the only one willing to push that extra.
Because you'll be the minority percentage.
That's right.
Well, it depends which market. I mean, I think here, I'm going to be politically incorrect, I think we're probably incredibly passive. You know, we come from a country which is sitting on a huge resource base. We're very fortunate, high standard of living, everybody's pretty comfortable. People don't feel this, you know, burning need. I mean, you guys have both come from cultures where people have had to go through much worse, and it instills a different mindset in people. People are willing to, you know, work a lot harder, eat more hardship.
Well, I can tell you now, my kids probably don't have that drive that I had. Yeah. Because we were refugees.
My family migrated to Australia in the mid '80s.
Oh yeah.
But I was very young then, so the circumstances. Not sure. I believe we might have been religious refugees.
Okay. So when you come in as a refugee, I mean, it's a classic like sociological pattern. So first generation gets in, just does whatever they have to do for their kids. Yeah. Second generation usually does extremely well because their parents have poured everything into them and they feel obliged to repay their parents and they work really hard and they're usually hugely successful. And then third generation, they're kind of comfortable because mum and dad were really successful and gave them everything and they don't have to try. You know, families like mine have been here. I don't know.
My kids are going to try.
Well, you just beat them until they try, right?
Early on, you touched on, Cynthia, that Australia have some great people, smarts, people creating great brands and what have you and so forth. Given that, you know, we're saying Australia is generally, we are a very comfortable country. Yeah. How does that play together in terms of, you know, still developing and inventing great things? Does that come from a space of comfort, or does it come from, you know?
Well, people can still innovate, right? But they can innovate within a sphere that they know. So, you know, I'm awesome, not me personally, but I'm awesome at electronics. I can come up with all these things. It's in an environment that I'm comfortable in, but you try to take them and say, okay, now let's put this into Japan. And they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I think, you know, that's the shame, because you see sometimes there are these things. I mean, and I've spoken to a number of companies recently which have said, you know, it's really interesting. We've got to 7 to 8% of our revenue coming from exports, but we've never done it strategically. The orders just come in and we don't do anything. And then they've suddenly thought, oh, wow, if we actually put some structure around this, what could we do? Yes. And I think you have to really be able to show people, well, if you can get this far and you haven't even tried, imagine how far you could get if you really tried. And I'm thinking of one company in particular that I spoke to where we had this conversation, and they said we're at 7 to 8% of exports and it's all been organic. And then they said, oh, and we've got one major client in Australia. And suddenly in my head, all the alarm bells went off, and I thought, wow, if that major client who takes nearly all of your stuff decides it's turning off the tap on your products, you're gone. in a heartbeat. And so for me, it's a no-brainer that company should be looking. And luckily they're smart enough and they sort of recognise that and said, actually, can you help? And they're now looking at distribution into a couple of continents. But it's about getting people to really think, okay, we can get by not doing this, but what is the upside if we do it?
Yes.
And what's the potential downside if we don't do it?
And do you make it easy to present your case across? I mean, what do you need from, say, me as a company coming to you? Hey, Cynthia, I want to go. What do you need from a company at the basic foundations for you to actually give them proper good advice?
Well, I mean, we kind of have a criteria, which is we prefer to work with companies turning over $2 to $50 million. So if you come to me and you say, I'm a pre-revenue startup, I'll say, please go away and do some more work and come back and see me in a few years' time. And I don't do that for any bad reason, but I don't want to set people up to fail.
Yes.
And as you guys know, going global is quite an undertaking.
Actually, no, you're doing them a favour.
Yeah.
In many ways, that you're asking them to go and do a bit more homework, go
And
a little
build
bit
up
more
a revenue base, prove the product, prove the brand, get the systems in place, and then to come back. If somebody comes and says, I'm turning over, let's say I'm turning over $3 million, we'll then sit down and say, okay, tell us what does success look like in 5 years? How many markets do you want to be in? How much do you want to turn over? What do you think your EBIT should be? And then unpack that with them and paint a picture. Look at where they are right now. Okay, you want to be at 50 million in 5 years and you're at 5 million now? Okay, I mean, it might be doable. Let's unpack what you really need to do to get there. And then get them to pick out where the gaps are, really to make a list of all those challenges, and then pick out the logical starting point, which is, it depends, but usually the logical starting point is going to be market selection. Yeah. So people come every week and say, oh, I have 5 markets in mind, which one should I do? What do you think? And I have to say, look, I'm a smart enough person, but unfortunately I don't hold all the data for every segment, for every industry, for every country in my brain. We'll need to do some analysis. So they can engage us, we'll do analysis, and then we will produce basically a ranked list, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, based on big data sets that we have run their information through, and we can sit with them and say, look, Japan's got the most promise in the space that you're in, followed by, Germany, followed by the United Kingdom, but we think you should start with the United Kingdom because, for example, your product's already trademarked there, and culturally it's a lot easier. So let's do the UK first, and then step up to Germany, and then step up to Japan. So that's kind of how we work with people. And then when we've worked out where to go, we've narrowed it to a single market. That simplifies the process a lot, because when people have got 5 markets, they don't know where to focus. They're getting pulled, and there's all this noise. Once you cut it down to 1, suddenly all your options go away and you just have a single kind of path to follow. And then we unpack, who is your ideal international client? What's the right channel to market for you going to be?
And it's different for every...
It's different for every...
product,
service.
And if you're not careful, I think the conversation can get very subjective very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? If a company comes to you without a clear objective they want to achieve.
Look, people do stupid things like setting up places because they went somewhere on holidays and they fell in love with it. I'm not kidding. I have a naughty story that I will tell anyway about somebody who went on holidays to Bali and wanted a packet of Smith's Crisp, the salt and vinegar, in the purple packet. Yes. Couldn't get any, and decided on a whim that they wanted to be the importer, the distributor for Smith's in Bali. Now, I mean, what? I don't think that's a very smart business decision, but that's the kind of thing that people do.
We serve the women, folks. We are all in the service industry, right?
Yeah.
I just want to point out that was not a client of mine.
Okay, good.
So allow me to touch on something, I guess, that is the buzzword at the moment, which is artificial intelligence. Okay. Can we just maybe spend a moment talking about what that technology is to you? Has it impacted your respective businesses, or do you see it impacting your respective businesses?
I like it. I think it can. I wouldn't want to be generating all my marketing collateral using ChatGPT, but I think where you have an AI function and a human working together, you can get some great things. So, for example, for ChatGPT, if I'm feeling a bit stuck on, a topic for something and I need to write something, I'll ask ChatGPT a question, see what it comes up with, and then look at that for inspiration. Right. Or the other way around, sometimes I write something and I think, that looks pretty good. Sometimes I'll put it through ChatGPT and say, can you please tidy this up for me? Yeah. Look at it again and then say, oh yeah, this is a bit better. Right. It's not 100% foolproof. Sometimes it gives you things that you don't want. I would not rely on it for any factual information, pretty much. But I think in terms of the way that it can speed up, for example, marketing, yes. I think it can make a big contribution.
If I can summarize this correctly from your perspective,
yeah.
It's adding to your work as opposed to a threat to your work.
Oh, look, absolutely. Right. Because we can use it to kind of speed up some of the things we do or refine stuff that we've done. Right. It gives you another way of cross-checking what you've done.
Right. Binh, how about you?
Well, I think AI is actually a threat. Cynthia, you just have to be a bit careful about using AI because if you put in your IP or the process,
it will learn it, right?
it will take it and then they will repurpose it.
Yeah.
And that is the danger of that. And I think there's lots of discussion groups about patent, IP, because if you put it in there, it actually almost potentially could invalidate your client's novelty. Oh. Yeah. Yes, use it for marketing, but by putting in,
we'd never put a product in there.
But even a process, like the other day when I was trying to write down what my unique, selling point or my unique services were, I was like, I don't really want to put in it because if somebody else wants a profile, they might take some bits of my profile that I've just written, and.
But can you hold back that tsunami though?
You can't. Yeah. You can't, but it's about just being really careful about what you put in. Yeah. Nothing that is proprietary because it's then reshared. I actually had a really good discussion with someone that was in this space, and they said we shouldn't really be afraid of AI in terms of taking our jobs. We should be thinking about AI, but cybersecurity, because it's all the stuff that that they can gather from us, and then AI could end up replicating us. Our identity and things like that. So, but it's so broad. But it is a danger, and it's more just about educating yourself, what you put in, just to make sure that you're protecting yourself. But at the same time, you're right. You can't stop it. Yeah. It's more about educating yourself to make sure that you're not sort of doing something that's not good for yourself or for your client.
And I think you can't rely on it to generate quality stuff, which is why I say, for us, I like to use it in tandem with a human, to use it either as a thought starter or as a refiner. Yeah. Because, I did an experiment the other day. I sit on a board, and the organisation that I was on the board for didn't have an accounts receivable process, and I said, I'm happy to share what we use at our company. Mm. And then somebody else piped up and said, or you could just ask ChatGPT to write one for you. And I was like, that's interesting. Mm. So while I was sitting on this call, I typed in, ask ChatGPT to do an accounts receivable process for me. And it did bring up one, but I looked at it and I went, this is not that useful. It's actually far too general. Yeah. So I think,
But with talking about it now, but as more users use it, it's going to get powerful.
This is a massive topic because there's so many layers as well, right? Because if you look at AI, it's based on the World Wide Web.
Yes.
I'm going to be old-fashioned and still call World Wide Web. And the World Wide Web, for a long time now, has been a black hole of, let's just use word crap.
Yeah.
Right. So the system itself is actually drawing from a lot of redundant information, or that is stuff that's just not quality stuff.
Yeah.
So given that it's database that it's learning from, and I feel that unless it starts drawing that knowledge base from a different database, which I can't see them doing, the general response from GPT and sort of stuff like that, this is because it's based on that database that isn't the holy grail database. It's mostly corrupt information in there anyway, right? It's deteriorated because, so for me, I think the buzz is there, the technology is real, But will it be any way of a real threat in the immediate future? I don't think.
Not immediate, no.
If you just, like for me, think about logic, it is drawing from the internet. And the internet for many, many years now has been deteriorating into a cesspool of God knows what in there anyway, right? The internet is not a good place anymore, right? You just have to look at your social medias, what have you, and so forth. It's changing the society. It's changing our brains.
Actually, there's a new job called prompt manager.
Yeah.
Someone actually, it's a real job where someone learns how to chat, like put in how to instruct these AI, ChatGPT. There's such a thing now. Role.
So there is a company called AutoGPT.
Okay.
It sounds fancy, but what it is basically a bunch of clever folks that's created these spreadsheet of prompts.
Yeah.
So that tells you if you want to achieve this, put in
That,
this
yeah.
sentence structure to get the best
Yes.
out of it, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what you do, it's drawing from that database. And I think most companies, we don't put our gold onto our websites anyway. It's an indication of where it should be or what things should be. Because all of the stuff we want to keep for ourselves, because that's our intellectual property to tell our clients. And I believe that will be the same case for yourselves. So Binh, thank you for coming. How do people engage with you, find you, or what you want them to know about you more?
Okay. Well, my name's Binh Rey. Even though it's spelled R-E-Y, it's pronounced Rye because my mother-in-law says I've got to correct people.
Okay.
Because, people say Binh Rey. I'm Binh Rey. I'm from Seriously Trademarks, and it's my own practice. And I just want people to know that when they're choosing a trademark expert, they need to really see if they've actually got the commercial experience of looking at a brand, not just the trademarkability of a brand, but just having that person understand the commercial reality if they get it wrong. And with that, then the trademark's probably going to be protected going forward without having to have multiple attempts of getting the trademark application through. So it's really just choosing the right trademark attorney. For me, it's more about being able to tell my clients that I've got branding experience and trademark expertise. And it's a great combination, as I said earlier.
And it's super affordable.
Super affordable.
That it's easy to
I'm
engage.
super friendly.
You make everything easy, right?
Yeah, and also if they do contact me, the clock's not ticking.
Yes.
It's not 6-minute increments. They ring, they have a chat, and if it's for them, great. If it's not, then I've been able to educate them about intellectual property protection.
Awesome. Cynthia, last words.
Well, I'm Cynthia Dearin, Managing Director at Dearin Associates, and essentially we help our clients to create a global footprint. Going global is kind of a complex process, but it doesn't have to be as difficult as you think. And I think what I've learned over the years is that the best way to do it and the least stressful way to do it is to follow a structured process, to pull it apart into a series of small projects that you can tackle without burning yourself out and blowing up your team. Like I said, there are quite a few bits in the process, but if you would like to read about those bits, to thank Lyle for having me on the show, I'd love to offer anybody who would like a copy of my book, Business Beyond Borders, Take Your Company Global. We'll put a link below this video.
Yes, we will.
Happy to give anybody a book. I'll make them a discount code.
No, I feel sad. I need to write a book too.
Very kind.
But thank you as well for me. Thank you for having me.